Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Today is the day we do Mythbusters, and the co-host is Chris Rossini. Chris is also the editor of the website ronpaullibertyreport.com. Chris, welcome to the program today.
Great to be back with you, Dr. Paul. Thank you.
Well, very good. I understand that we have a few things to discuss as far as some myths goes. Some of the myths that we've been dealing with have been advanced, and maybe a few new ones with this recent speech by Donald Trump. So what do you have?
Yes, Donald Trump gave a much talked about speech this week on foreign policy, and it was predictably filled with myths and lots of contradictions, so many so that we really had to narrow down to fit into our time frame which ones to actually cover. So let's get started. Donald Trump started by blaming President Obama. He said, quote, "President Obama has weakened our military by weakening our economy. Ending the theft of American jobs will give us resources we need to rebuild our military." Meanwhile, this weakened military that costs us $600 billion a year, Donald Trump mentioned this in the same exact speech, that trillions have been spent on planes, missiles, ships, equipment, building up the military to provide a strong defense for Europe and Asia. So it's weak on one hand and strong on the other. He contradicts himself. What do you think about all this, Dr. Paul?
Well, I think the biggest myth in this is that the weak economy has made the military weak. I think it's better to look at it the other way around. Unnecessary military spending makes the economy weak because it drains the economy. There's this myth that has gone around for a long time, it still exists, that when countries get into trouble, they divert the attention of the people away from their problems, and they start a war, and they're preoccupied, and they're off fighting, and they're employed. But that never generates a greater wealth. Wars destroy wealth. And this whole idea that Obama caused the weakened economy and therefore the military has suffered, it makes no sense whatsoever. Besides, Obama, as bad as he is, he didn't do anything to help the economy. He didn't allow the liquidation of debt and reintroduce free market economics and change the tax code, the kind of things that could have helped the economy. He continued the Republican policies of Keynesianism, which is a bipartisan policy. And that means that deficits don't matter, keep spending, you stimulate the economy by spending. If you need money, you print the money. It goes on and on. So there was the perpetuation of this. So, you know, it's pretty tough in this day and age to even say that Obama isn't the only monster out there and suggest, well, you know, when Obama took over, it seems to me like we were at the beginning of that downturn. The downturn actually occurred during Bush's term, but that's a consequence of bad monetary policy, and these downturns are predictable, not exactly when they'll start. We can only say that if you don't do the right things, they will continue on and on. But this idea that one president does it, no, it's been going on. We've been going through these cycles. And also it was predictable that eventually the temporary bailouts, the temporary inoculation with more money and more spending doesn't work. And that's been the big problem since 08 and 09. So it hasn't been that first we have the arrival of Obama. He makes the economy weak, and that's why the military is having problems getting enough money, which is a myth in itself, and we'll talk more about that, but that is completely mixed up. So if you take $600 billion plus, really, on military spending, it has nothing to do with defense spending. It usually aggravates our security. It doesn't provide more defense. So that in itself just takes away from the money that could be spent if it were allowed to stay in the economy. And then if you didn't have to bail out people and give welfare and let the real wealth stay in the economy and people were working and saving, this would be a different world entirely. It isn't. But this is an entire myth that the economy, the weak economy, caused not enough money being spent in the military. But the weak economy is a serious problem, and we have to deal with that in another way by deciding what our economic policies ought to be in this country. And they do need radical change, because we're suffering from the consequence of probably 70, 80 years of bad economic policy that's finally has caught up with us.
Next, Dr. Paul, lots of contradictions. Last night, Donald Trump was on O'Reilly Factor, and I'm reading on TargetLiberty.com that he's saying that he flat out would keep U.S. troops in Afghanistan, and he is ready to bomb Libya and take their oil. Yet when you listen to his speech just a few days ago, he sounded like when George W. Bush was campaigning. He on non-nation building, he says, we're getting out of nation building business. And instead, we're going to create stability in the world. Now, what's wrong with that statement, Dr. Paul?
Well, the whole thing is we don't have the ability, the wisdom, nor the money really to do that, and make somebody else pay for it is absurd, because that's almost like asking the Mexican people to pay for a wall, between Mexico and the United States. It just doesn't happen. But this distinction between nation building and stability, there's a bit of a myth there, because nation building is one thing, and I think Trump is on to something there, because a lot of people don't like, the occupation and this pretense that we can convert them into something they are not. But stability, how is he going to produce stability? Everybody would like stability, and I'm for stability, and that's why I want our troops and our government and our CIA out of these countries. But if you're looking for a reference on stability in some of these countries, it is true that Obama hasn't done much to bring about stability, but neither did Bush. The instability comes by us deciding that certain leaders aren't good leaders, and they might be Saddam Hussein or Assad and Gaddafi. So we decide we have to get rid of them. Yeah, they're imperfect, but these were guys that had stability, of a stability that you want, and maybe that's what Trump has in mind. But he wants to own them as long as they do what he tells them, and then pay for what we want done, which is not true. He who pays the piper is the one that dictates the rules. So if we decide we want such and such dictator in Libya, which we sort of did and it hasn't gone well, and they have to do our bidding, they're not going to give us money for it. They're not going to let us haul away the oil. That's a throwback to mercantilism, that we go invade and establish governments. So for the best I can tell from what he's suggesting is just another form of intervention, and has no chance of succeeding. Even if you had a temporary success, which over the years we have propped up these dictators, but they're always just temporary. I mean, we propped up the Shah in Iran, for decades, but it was a disaster. It led to the current problem just barely getting solved now and improving in a certain direction now. But propping up a dictator, and it could be argued that we produced some sort of stability in Iran, but it was temporary, it was artificial, and it led to the growth of the more radical elements and the overthrow and taking over the embassy and putting us in bad straits with Iran for many, many years. And it's amazing how that gets turned around. It was all Iran's fault for doing this, and never our fault for going in and creating a government that we think will create stability. So there is a big difference. The myth is that they're not the same, or there's not a significant difference between a nation building and an aggressive policy of demanding stability and demanding collection for the work that we want done. That is a myth. It hasn't worked in the past. It's not going to work. And besides, we're broke. We won't be able to afford it. And even with the relative success over the years, I don't even think we're capable of doing that anymore.
Next, Dr. Paul, is probably, in my opinion, one of the more frightening things that Trump has said. And it deals with, especially with transparency and accountability of elected officials. especially with our government that wields powers that no government should ever wield around the world. And he says, quote, "We're totally predictable. We tell everything. We're sending troops, we tell them. We're sending something else. We have a news conference. We have to be unpredictable, and we have to be unpredictable starting now." Now, what's wrong with that, Dr. Paul?
Well, I think he has it backwards. He hasn't been listening to our program. We're complaining all the time about not knowing what's going on. You know, do we know, do the American people know about the hit list, you know, the kill list that the president looks at each week? Do we know where the next drone missile is going to hit? Do we know the next country that he's going to try to overthrow? Yes, they do announce, you know, some things that I think Troop wouldn't announce that, okay, we're going to start bombing such and such country. But that generally isn't the case. I mean, when there was an announcement that Obama was going to bomb Syria, the Congress and the people reacted against this, and it was at least delayed. But then it occurred anyway, more in secrecy. So we're talking about secrecy. He's arguing for secrecy. And I think that we need to know more because, of course, the policy is bad. Then you say, we're not going to tell anybody. Who's anybody? That means us, the people, aren't allowed to know. So he's endorsing with a much greater authoritarian approach to doing what is happening now and don't tell anybody, you know, what's going on. And maybe this coincides with his attitude of how Edward Snowden should be treated. Edward Snowden is not a hero to him. As a matter of fact, I think he called one time for the execution of Snowden. Snowden's trying to tell us what's going on. But this whole idea that it would be noble to never tell anybody anything that was going on and that he can strike out anytime he wants. And that's exactly opposite of what should exist in a republic because we're talking about war. You know, he's talking about using the military and who's going to be arrested and who's on the kill list and how we're going to manage which leader we're going to assassinate. And I think we need a much more transparency rather than less. The myth is the last thing we need is more secrecy. What we need is more transparency of our government.
Yes, and finally, Dr. Paul, this last quote that I'm going to read is, I mean, if anybody in the military-industrial complex is worried about Donald Trump, you know, this puts it to rest. They have nothing to worry about. More of the same is on the way. Bush, Obama, Trump, here we go. Here's his quote. "We will spend what we need to rebuild our military. It is the cheapest single investment we can make. We will develop, build, and purchase the best equipment known to mankind. Our military dominance must be unquestioned, and I mean unquestioned, by anybody and everybody." Take it away, Dr. Paul.
Trump doesn't even mention, like most neocons would, they'd at least say it's for national security. He just wants military might, and everybody will obey and do exactly as we tell them. But he falls into the same trap of what the neocons are always saying. So he says that the military needs rebuild. Obama tore down the military. That is the myth of this election, that the military has been torn down. We right now have over 6,000 nuclear warheads. Trump wants to rebuild them. But Obama's already started the program. He has $1 trillion program of rebuilding and building new and advanced nuclear weapons. How many nuclear weapons do we need to intimidate the world? I mean, it's preposterous to think about this. So he does fall into the trap of perpetuating the same policies we have, because what drives policy in Washington is spending policy, which is fully endorsed by the candidates and especially now by Trump. The military-industrial complex loves this because it will be more weapon building. But what are we going to do with it? We just intimidate the world? I think it does the opposite. It wastes the money. It hurts our economy. It doesn't make us more safe. It incites people to hate us. It incites blowback. And this is the problem. It doesn't change anything. It has essentially an authoritarian approach opposite of what a non-interventionist foreign policy would be. Now, I know some people who are sympathetic to non-intervention might be sympathetic to some of the things that Trump says, because he will say, well, I'm sick and tired of the NATO and sick and tired of UN. It's a go-along policy, and some of the neocons don't like that. But there are some neocons that very much agree with this military policy. And it's sort of bewildering to me why some people sort of think Trump might have a neat foreign policy, because one of his key advisors is Giuliani. I don't know whether they must have forgotten about Giuliani. So he's part of that. And Bolton's not yelling and screaming about Trump's foreign policy. So people should be a little more cautious. But the real myth here is that the Trump policy significantly is not that different than what we have. It will be interventionist. It will have a more nationalistic tone, and people will be attracted to that. But it's not designed for what a national defense should be. It's to defend our country, to protect our liberties, and not to police the world. This is an approach to police the world, but it's a very attractive thing because we're going to quit paying for it. We'll collect the bills. We're good bill collectors, and we'll write up a good contract, and they're going to have to pay us. That's not going to happen. So, but in the meantime, more weapons will be built. We'll be into the nuclear weapons business, on and on. And if nothing else, it will still be very intimidating to those people out there that see us as the enemy. I had an interesting thing happen. I was on a recent trip, and a fellow came up, and he described himself as Mexican. Whether he was a U.S. citizen or not, I don't know. But you know, he said, it's pretty amazing. He says, when I go now, he says, I get frightened. He was a world traveler. He says, I get frightened when I tell him I'm American. He says, it's much safer to say I'm a Mexican, because there's dislike because of the way we throw our weight around the world, and people disapprove of what we do. This will not change that. This will be, maybe it'll even be worse, because we'll be doing the same thing, and we won't be just trying to squeeze another dollar out of the American taxpayer or print the money and run up the debt. They say we're going to take it out of the hides of the people we're taking care of. So we're going to march in, and we're going to have stability the way we describe it. We're not going to have nation building. As long as you do what we say, you can have your own nation, but you'll have to do what we tell, and you'll have to pay for our services for taking care of you. It's a failed policy. That's not going to work. The only thing that's going to work in foreign policy is a non-interventionist foreign policy, which is designed to protect American citizens for the purpose of protecting their liberties. That means we should have free markets and free trade and friendships, and a strong enough military that nobody would dare attack us. Believe me, we don't need to spend trillions and trillions of more dollars and more nuclear weapons to tell the world, don't mess with us, because we will come back at you. That is not a threat to us, and it's a myth if anybody believes it. I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today, and Chris, thank you very much for being with us.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks, Dr. Paul.
Thank you. And to all the viewers, I want to thank you for being here, and please come back soon. Thank you. To help the economy. He didn't allow the liquidation of debt and reintroduce free market economics and change the tax code, the kind of things that could have helped the economy. He continued the Republican policies of Keynesianism, which is a bipartisan policy. And that means that deficits don't matter. Keep spending. You stimulate the economy by spending. If you need money, you print the money. It goes on and on. So there was the perpetuation of this. So it's pretty tough in this day and age to even say that Obama isn't the only monster out there, and suggest, well, when Obama took over, it seems to me like we were at the beginning of that downturn. The downturn actually occurred during Bush's term, but that's a consequence of bad monetary policy, and these downturns are predictable, not exactly when they'll start. We can only say that if you don't do the right things, they will continue on and on. But this idea that one president does it, no, it's been going on. We've been going through these cycles. And also it was predictable that eventually the temporary bailouts, the temporary inoculation with more money and more spending doesn't work. And that's been the big problem since 08 and 09. So it hasn't been that first we have the arrival of Obama. He makes the economy weak, and that's why the military is having problems getting enough money, which is a myth in itself, and we'll talk more about that. But that is completely mixed up. So if you take $600 billion plus, really, on military spending, it has nothing to do with defense spending. It usually aggravates our security. It doesn't provide more defense. So that in itself just takes away from the money that could be spent if it were allowed to stay in the economy. And then if you didn't have to bail out people and give welfare and let the real wealth stay in the economy and people were working and saving, this would be a different world entirely. It isn't. But this is an entire myth that the economy, the weak economy, caused not enough money being spent in the military. But the weak economy is a serious problem, and we have to deal with that in another way by deciding what our economic policies ought to be in this country. And they do need radical change because we're suffering from the consequence of probably 70, 80 years of bad economic policies that finally has caught up with us.
Next, Dr. Paul, lots of contradictions. Last night, Donald Trump was on O'Reilly Factor, and I'm reading on TargetLiberty.com that he's saying that he flat out would keep U.S. troops in Afghanistan, and he is ready to bomb Libya and take their oil. Yet when you listen to his speech just a few days ago, he sounded like when George W. Bush was campaigning. He on non-nation building, he says, we're getting out of nation building business. And instead, we're going to create stability in the world. Now, what's wrong with that statement, Dr. Paul?
Well, the whole thing is we don't have the ability, nor the wisdom, nor the money, really, to do that. And make somebody else pay for it is absurd because that's almost like asking the Mexican people to pay for a wall, between Mexico and the United States. It just doesn't happen. But this distinction between nation building and stability, there's a bit of a myth there because nation building is one thing, and I think Trump is on to something there because a lot of people don't like, the occupation and this pretense that we can convert them into something they are not. But stability, how is he going to produce stability? Everybody would like stability, and I'm for stability, and that's why I want our troops and our government and our CIA out of these countries. But if you're looking for a reference on stability in some of these countries, it is true that Obama hasn't done much to bring about stability, but neither did Bush. The instability comes by
weakening our economy. Ending the theft of American jobs will give us resources we need to rebuild our military. Meanwhile, this weakened military that costs us $600 billion a year, Donald Trump mentioned this in the same exact speech, that trillions have been spent on planes, missiles, ships, equipment, building up the military to provide a strong defense for Europe and Asia. So it's weak on one hand and strong on the other. He contradicts himself. What do you think about all this, Dr. Paul?
Well, I think the biggest myth in this is that the weak economy has made the military weak. I think it's better to look at it the other way around. Unnecessary military spending makes the economy weak because it drains the economy. There's this myth that has gone around for a long time, it still exists, that when countries get into trouble, they divert the attention of the people away from their problems and they start a war and they're preoccupied and they're off fighting and they're employed. But that never generates a greater wealth. Wars destroy wealth. And this whole idea that Obama caused the weakened economy and therefore the military has suffered, it makes no sense whatsoever. Besides, Obama, as bad as he is, he didn't do anything Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to the Liberty Report. Today is the day we do Mythbusters, and the co-host is Chris Rossini. Chris is also the editor of the website ronpaullibertyreport.com. Chris, welcome to the program today.
Great to be back with you, Dr. Paul. Thank you.
Well, very good. I understand that we have a few things to discuss as far as some myths goes. Some of the myths that we've been dealing with have been advanced, and maybe a few new ones with this recent speech by Donald Trump. So what do you have?
Yes, Donald Trump gave a much talked about speech this week on foreign policy, and it was predictably filled with myths and lots of contradictions, so many so that we really had to narrow down to fit into our time frame which ones to actually cover. So let's get started. Donald Trump started by blaming President Obama. He said, quote, "President Obama has weakened our military